welcome back to my channel. I'm Rachel, the owner and creator here at the Eclectic Cottage in Spokane, Washington. Today is Wednesday and I am feeling so much better than I did last week, you guys. I don't know what the deal was, but I was just feeling a little just yucky, and so I didn't get much of anything accomplished. So for today's video, I have a few thrift flips for you. I absolutely love how they all came together. I can hardly wait to show them to you guys. And so without further ado, let's get to today's projects. So you guys will probably recognize this painting from a recent thrift haul I did. And when I did the thrift haul, I asked you guys if I should paint this frame or leave it alone. And the answers I got back were about half and half. Some thought I should paint it, some thought I shouldn't. And as much as I didn't want to paint the frame, I really needed to do something to it because I wasn't a fan of that really bright copper. So what I came up with is using DIY's black wax and going in with a coat of that right over the copper. Now you can see here I'm using a little bit of mineral spirits to thin out my wax just a touch so that it will really go down into all of the details of this frame. So I'm just simply taking a little artist brush and working my way around the entire frame, one length at a time, and working that wax into all of the nooks and crannies and then going along the side as well. And once I'm done with that, I'm just taking a dry shop towel and very gently wiping back the excess wax. Once I'd worked my way around the entire frame, it was time to remove my masking tape and clean up my glass. For me, the addition of the black wax was the perfect solution for this frame. It toned down the bright copper. It gave it a very beautiful antiqued look. It brought out all of the detail in the frame a little bit better. And I think the black also brought out some of the color from inside the picture as well. I absolutely love how this came out, and I hope you guys like my solution as well as I do. My second project is another one that I picked up really recently at the Goodwill. I grabbed this set of wooden boxes that have lids. I think I paid $2.99 for the set, and I knew I wanted to paint them and do something fun with the lids as soon as I saw them. So I am using Sweet Pickins milk paint in the color O Olive for these. And the reason I chose O Olive is it just happens to be the milk paint color of the month for the month of March. So beginning on March 1st, O Olive will be 35% off. I have a bunch of it coming, so if you are in need, check out my website at www.theeclecticcottagespokane.com. Now, since these were kind of a raw wood, I decided to leave out the extra bond. So I just mixed up my paint with some hot water and went in and gave these each 2 good coats of that O Olive paint. Now, as I was painting these, I kind of switched directions a little bit on how I wanted to finish them. So instead of painting a second coat of green over the top of the lids, I went ahead and covered them with some white paint instead in preparation for some decoupage paper. Now, the white paint I'm using here is white linen. It's one of the Cottage colors by DIY that has a built-in sealer. And I like the built-in sealer for decoupaging just because I don't have to worry about reactivating my paint and having it leach up into my paper. Now for the decoupage paper, I am using this beauty by Roycycled Treasures. This one's called Pressed Flowers Masterboards. It is by far one of my favorites, and I have used this on so many projects now, you guys, and I still have pieces left. So I cut out the chunks that I wanted for my lids. I gave each one a little spritz of water to just kind of stretch out the fibers and help prevent wrinkles. And for my medium this time, I am throwing you guys a little bit of a curveball. I'm out of liquid patina at the moment, so I am using Sweet Pickins top coat. This is their matte top coat, and I'm using it the same as I would the liquid patina. I am just putting a coat of the top coat onto my piece and then laying my decoupage paper down over that and then smoothing it out, and then going over it with another coat of the top coat. This top coat works just the same as the liquid patina. Everything adhered beautifully, and the thing I like about the matte top coat is that it's matte. So when you're done, it's a very nice matte finish. Once I had my paper decoupaged down, I went ahead and set my lids aside to dry completely before moving on to the next step, which is sanding off the excess paper. For that, I'm just using some 150 grit sandpaper that I had, and in a downward sweeping motion going around the entire edge of each lid and sanding off that little bit of extra paper. Once I had all of the excess paper removed, I went ahead and grabbed some 220 grit sandpaper and just smoothed out the paint over the little boxes. I had also dribbled some into the lid of one of the boxes that I had to sand out. And as I was sanding, I realized I actually did get a little bit of chippiness since I didn't add any extra bond, which actually surprised me a little bit. I thought with these being such raw wood that I wouldn't have any chippiness, but you just never know when you're dealing with milk paint. Once I had my little boxes sanded nice and smooth, it was time to seal my paint. And for that, I chose a Sweet Pickins dark oil wax. I love the little bit of an aged patina this gives to the olive paint, and I also used it as a stain and sealer for the insides of the box as well. I'm just using an old chip brush to apply a nice even coat of that dark oil wax to my paint on both of my boxes, and I'm also using it as a stain and a sealer for the inside of the boxes as well. So just one good even coat of that oil wax all over. I didn't go over the paper. Obviously, it had already been sealed, so there was no need. And then I set everything aside to soak that oil wax in for about 15 minutes. Once the paint had had time to soak in the oil wax, I went in with a dry shop towel and wiped down all of my surfaces to remove the excess oil wax. Once I was done with that, these little boxes were finished. I absolutely love the combo of that olive paint with this beautiful decoupage paper, and I love how these came out. I really hope you guys like them as much as I do. I'm sure you guys will recognize this cute little step stool from my most recent junk run. I was so excited to find this little thing. And then when I got it back to my shop, I had the hardest time trying to figure out exactly what I wanted to do with this thing. So I figured I would just start by sanding off some of the paint that was already on it and just getting rid of the design and, of course, giving it a little bit of a scratch coat. This paint was very, very slippery, and so I just wanted to give my paint a little something to grab onto. So I'm kind of scuff sanding the entire thing. Then I took it inside and washed it back up again and got ready for paint. What I did decide is that I wanted to use one of the brand new milk paint colors by Sweet Pickins, and I chose Kent. This is a gorgeous color, you guys. It is a little bit like juniper, but it has less green and more blue to it. It's just a very, very pretty, soft blue, and I absolutely love it. Now, since this was such a slippery surface, and just in case I missed anything while I was sanding, I did go ahead and add the recommended amount of Extra Bond to my paint for this piece. Now, if you've never used milk paint before, it comes in a powder form and you add warm water to it to mix. And the ratio is 1 part milk paint to 1 part water. For this, since I added Extra Bond, I added half again as much Extra Bond to my mix. The other thing to note about milk paint is it doesn't last for very long if left to sit. So you only want to mix up about the amount that you're going to use at a given time. For this particular project, I mixed up 1/4 cup of milk paint with 1/4 cup hot water, and I added 1/8 of a cup of Extra Bond, and I had just the right amount to go over this with 3 good coats of paint. I did the 3rd coat mainly because I like to sand my pieces, and I just wanted to make sure that I had enough coverage to do that. Once I had applied all my paint and my piece was completely dry, I went ahead and grabbed some 220 grit sandpaper and just went over the entire thing to smooth out my finish. Now, I'm not trying to distress here. I am simply trying to knock off any little chunks of milk paint that might have been left behind and just ensure that I have a nice smooth surface. When I was finished sanding, I went ahead and wiped down my piece with a damp shop towel to just remove any sanding dust that was left behind. Now, fortunately, I'd finally come up with a plan for my little stool, and the first step in my plan is to use this beautiful stamp set by Redesign with Prima. This one is called Bohemian Florals to stamp a background. Before I can get started, though, I needed to condition my stamp, so I'm just taking some 220 grit sandpaper and lightly going over the stamp so that it holds on to the ink a little bit better. Then I am inking this up with some Stazon ink in black, just making sure that I have good coverage over the entire stamp. Now, since I wanted this to be a background and more muted, before I stamp this directly onto my stool, I am stamping off some of that ink using a piece of paper. So I'm just laying that piece of paper down to soak up the majority of that ink before I place the stamp onto my stool. Before I placed my image down onto my stool, I went ahead and put a little mark directly in the middle so that I had a guide for my stamp. So I made sure it was centered. Then I just placed it down where I wanted it, used my hands to smooth it over and push it down into my paint, and then removed the stamp. I did the same exact procedure for the other step on this little stool. Again, just marking center and then placing it down, smoothing it out with my hands to make sure I had a decent impression, and then pulling up the stamp again. My second image ended up being a little bit darker than I wanted it, so I grabbed some 220 grit sandpaper and just went over it in the darkest spots to lighten it up a bit. Once I'd successfully lined up my stamp a little, it was time to move on to transfers. Now for this piece, I wanted something that would go well with the blue. And so I picked out this set by Redesign with Prima. It's one of their newer sets called Indigo Petals. I absolutely love this set. Now, fortunately, there were two different transfers in here that were opposite facing swag. So it worked out perfectly that I could put one on the top and one on the bottom, and they would kind of face each other. So I put the bottom one on first, and I just peeled that backer off of my transfer, laid it down where I wanted it, and then I began using my thumbnail in some places and the transfer stick to apply the transfer to my piece. Now, if you've never used a transfer, it is a really simple process. You just cut out the piece that you want, peel the backer off, lay it down over your piece and smooth it out, and then you can use your fingernail, or in this case, the transfer stick, to rub the transfer down into your piece while you pull back the piece of vellum. As you go, just be careful that if you pull up a piece of the transfer, you lay your vellum back down and re-rub that spot so that all of your transfer is adhered. As you can see here, these transfers go down very, very easily over milk paint, which is one of the reasons that I love using it. Once your transfer is completely adhered, you want to go back over it with a piece of that vellum to burnish your transfer in. This helps remove any air bubbles and make sure you have really good adhesion to your piece. Once I had the lower step done, it was time to move on to the second step. Once I had my transfers down, I thought that the front of this little stool still needed something. So I grabbed out this other stamp out of the same set, and using the same procedure as before, I applied it to the front little panels on each of the steps. Once I had that done, I thought, the side could kind of use a little something too. So just at the very top, I added a little stamp as well. Now, as before, there were a couple areas that ended up being a little darker than I wanted them to be. So again, I just went over those with some 220 grit sandpaper. Once I was finished decorating my little stool, it was time to seal my paint. Now, like the DIY clay-based paints, milk paint also needs to be sealed. And in most cases, I choose to use oil wax to seal my milk paint. However, in this case, since there were so many awkward little nooks and crannies to get into, I decided to go ahead and use DIY's clear wax instead. I love clear wax. I love the soft matte feel that you get when you use it. And I am simply just applying it with a soft bristle brush here in a nice even layer, and then using a dry shop towel to wipe back the excess wax. Even though in the beginning I really didn't know what I wanted to do with this little stool, I think it came together beautifully. I love how it came out, and I hope you guys do too. Well, that is it from here for today, you guys. I hope you liked my projects for today's video. What did you guys think of the black wax on that copper frame? I personally absolutely love how that came out. And it's already sold, so somebody else must have liked how it came out as well. And what did you think of the little stool makeover? I am so happy with how it ended up coming together because I really had no clue when I got started exactly what I wanted to do with it. I just started with the color and then picked out the transfers, and then everything else just kind of fell into place. So I'm very thankful that it came together well. Anyway, if you enjoyed today's video, please remember to give it a thumbs up. I so appreciate that. And if you haven't already, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel and then just hit the little notification bell so you don't miss anything. And then of course, don't forget to drop a comment below and let me know what you thought of today's projects. Just a quick reminder too, any of the paint and products you see me use can be purchased through me at my website, and that's www.theeclecticcottagespokane.com. I carry, of course, the Sweet Pickins milk paint and products. I do have an order coming in with more of the bespoke collection, as well as some of the color for March, which is Olive. I also carry Roycycled Treasures decoupage papers, as well as Redesign with Prima, and of course DIY paint and products. So if you're in need of anything, go check them out on my website. For Saturday's video, it is going to be probably more thrift flips. I've already got a couple projects started, so hopefully I'll have those all finished up for you for Saturday. Until then, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your week and beginning of the weekend. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you Saturday. Bye.